racism because they don't necessarily feel hatred in their hearts when they do it, and they're probably correct. Racism isn't about hate. It's about indifference to harm being done to people that don't look like you, especially if that harm is useful for how you maintain your own status quo. Racism is still here because it has utility as an organizing social framework for white Americans. The role racism plays in this country is for building consensus in community. It's almost ritualistic in its use.
I am a Western chauvinist. And I refuse to apologize. For creating the modern world.
White youth for a generation have made racist jokes, not as an expression of hate, but almost as an initiation into whiteness as a concept, performing the agreement amongst each other that blackness is beneath them and unworthy of sanctity. This is why racist group chats exist so prominently, such as the one the Young Republicans got caught on earlier this year. This is why white kids on Omegle and other chat random sites and Call of Duty lobbies hurl slurs from the safety of their perceived anonymity, going all the way back to slavery. This is why poor whites had astoundingly low standards of living, but fought for the Confederacy because it preserved their way of life, as wretched as that way of life was. The lynchings of black people during slavery going into Jim Crow was often a community gathering or festival environment for white people. They would make flyers and sell food as they watched black bodies burn and hang from the poplar trees. Then afterwards, some would even take their body parts as souvenirs. Feel free to Google this. I am not making this up. The biggest falsehood about racism is that it's about the hatred of any group of people. But in reality, racism is about a perverse love for whiteness and the love language through which that is expressed. And this is just the overt stuff that whites will admit you shouldn't do. We shouldn't lynch people. We shouldn't say the N-word. They keep doing it and saying it's a joke, but they know they shouldn't. And the reason why that is still such a focus because it serves as the cover for the much more harmful systemic racism that most whites, including Charlie Kirk, would never even admit exists.
There is nothing fascistic about deporting people in your country that are here illegally, securing your borders, and putting your own people first. How many of you students out there feel as if you'd be graded differently if you come out as a conservative or a Trump supporter? Raise your hand. Look around. That's fascism. That is definitional fascism.
Do you think, for all that I just said, do you think a few cherry-picked statistics and some witty clapbacks is going to change this? No. This is the culture wars.
Busy schedule to meet with us, the grassroots. We're fighting on college campuses every single day. We're fighting for the next generation. And to know that we have the backing of the most successful president of our generation means the world. Because look, we are in a culture war right now. We're fighting for free speech, for free markets, and for American exceptionalism. And to have the president take time out of his schedule to meet with us, to just exchange some ideas really, really means the world. And look, this is a battle that we're going to win.
And beyond that, we spoke about the black community and black issues.
I can't stress enough how important culture wars are to the American right and to American politics in general. And this is because culture wars have effectively replaced actual politics for most people, right and left. But specifically for the right, it has been instrumental in convincing many people to vote against their best interests. When regular people are surveyed about policies, they almost always lean toward more progressive policies, more taxing the rich, less government in people's personal lives, sensible gun control laws, etc. It's not universal. Many Americans support tougher border laws, for example, but very few desire to see what's actually been happening under Trump since he's been elected. Even attitudes on abortion rights consistently fall to the left of Republican policies. Conservative voters constantly vote against their self-interest, whether they realize it or not, and even in moments where they do realize it, they still don't care because, as I've been saying, this is a cult, and the culture wars are their, deep lore text. The culture wars, ironically, are proof that facts actually should care about feelings because people have been using feelings to override facts in this country for 100 plus years. There's so many examples of this, both historical and recent. One is that conservatives are more likely to die from COVID due to vaccine hesitancy and resistance to masking. Despite the fact that science, logic, and so much information was telling them that masking and vaccines would save their lives, so many conservatives were literally, I remember vividly, I'll see if I can find the clip, a guy that was on a respirator talking about how he doesn't regret not getting a vaccine or masking, and then he died 2 days later.
asked Christopher why hadn't he gotten the vaccine.
I'm more of a libertarian, and I don't like being told what I have to do. I'm still not completely 100% sold on the inoculation.
It was eerie to hear Christopher insist on his individual freedoms, even as he struggled to breathe.
Do you think I probably should have had a little healthier fear that need to be taken more seriously? And I don't know how close I am to being a lot worse. I really don't know.
Christopher Green died 9 days after this interview. He was 53 years old.
It doesn't take much to find countless examples of conservatives directly being hurt by Trump's policies on tariffs or ICE crackdowns, people's mail order brides being deported, and it's often people who voted for him. And whether or not they regret it is up for grabs. But understand, pointing this out about Trump is low-hanging fruit because it's been everyone since the beginning of time in this country, especially when it comes to conservative ideology. For example, consider free healthcare, something that the rest of the developed world has had for more than half a century, and it should and would be here in America if not for the utilization of culture wars. Numerous American presidents from a variety of political standpoints, going back to the early 1900s, have tried to create a universal healthcare system that was free to Americans, but were stymied by capitalistic and conservative entities using emotionally manipulative culture war methods of convincing the masses that having free healthcare was somehow not in their best interest.
President Truman was reelected largely on a campaign for a single-payer national health plan, and the Democratic Party gained control of Congress. At the same time, Americans were on edge after World War II, and a lot of that fear was placed broadly on the construct of communism. This fear towards communism and communists, which infested the world through the Cold War, became known as the Red Scare. Opponents of the WMD healthcare bill took advantage of these fears to squander its success. The AMA was one of these opponents, and with help from public relations firm Whitaker and Baxter, launched one of the largest lobbying efforts of its time. The group spent over $4.5 million, $48 million in today's dollars, on advertisements, newspapers, magazines, letters, and radio stations across the country. Slogans played on communist fears with titles such as "A Threat to Health" and "A Threat to Freedom," and utilized the term socialized medicine whenever possible. Public opinion in support of government health insurance fell from 74% in 1942 to 51% by 1949, just a year after President Truman was voted into office.
The same thing happened with the New Deal back in the 1930s. Was the New Deal the 1930s? Am I tripping? Don't make fun of me. Yeah, okay. The New Deal was at its core a socialist work program that lifted millions of Americans into the middle class out of poverty. But it only passed because it was initially designed to exclude undeserving black Americans as much as possible. However, after political wins for black people, such as the Civil Rights Bill, fair housing laws, etc., this required New Deal government programs to be more accessible to all Americans. And you see white Americans quickly turn against the very policies that induced the golden age of American prosperity in the 1950s and 60s. Even today, the very idea that people should get free health care is somehow controversial and un-American, even as millions of white Americans suffer and go broke due to health care costs. A fun fact to never forget is that white people poured cement into their own swimming pools to ensure that black people could not swim with them. Conservative political positions are positions to maintain systems of dominance and exclusion, even if those most dominated and excluded are white people, all cloaked in the rhetoric of personal responsibility. Charlie Kirk himself railed against the idea that the government might offer free lunches to school children, claiming that the problem with school children was obesity and not food insecurity.
Do you think that there should be free school lunch for all children?
No.
Why?
Of course not, because parents should feed their kids, not the government.
What if they can't?
Go get a job. Show me a single child in America going hungry. Doesn't exist. Number two, we have churches, we have food shelters, we have billions, and it does not exist. We have a child obesity problem, not a child starvation problem in this country.
Refusing to recognize that those problems are connected and that there's tons of evidence that literally millions of American children need free lunches, and that it would be incredibly beneficial to those children and thus society as a whole to get them. In this clip, Kirk yells, "Get a job," and the crowd laughs because they still operate on the image of black welfare queens, not realizing that the average recipient of food stamps is a single white woman with 2 kids. Mind you, the woman originally used to demonize the concept of welfare and called the welfare queen was a white woman.
Her name was Linda Taylor, and she was identified by the Chicago Tribune in 1974 as a person who had committed welfare fraud while driving fancy cars, including a Cadillac, and very quickly after that she was given the nickname the Welfare Queen.
It is accurate to say that a higher percentage of black children suffer from food insecurity in this country, something like 20 to 30% of black children, or around 2.3 million kids. And white children suffer from food insecurity at a much lower rate, somewhere around 7%, but we live in a predominantly white country. So that 7% adds up to close to 4 million white children whose parents need to get a job, so the rest of us don't have to pay a few extra dollars on our taxes to help their children not starve and not grow up being statistically more likely to end up dead or in jail. Ironically, paying for school lunches up front means paying less for jails, healthcare, and welfare later in their lives. But because of people like Charlie Kirk, many conservatives would rather those 4 million children starve if it means those who are undeserving suffer. Even now, as the government is preparing to shut down, conservatives are mocking people who won't be able to feed themselves. But here's the real power of this cult, of the culture war. Some of these same people doing the mocking were themselves once on SNAP benefits. Some of these same poor white moms of those 4 million kids are still likely going to vote Republican in 2028. And I want to correct the common sentiment from progressives that says it's because they're dumb. They're not dumb. Delusional maybe, but they just fully believe in the worldview they've been sold. And this begs the question, why and how? These decisions actively make America worse for everyone. Not just black people or gay people or immigrants, everyone. And most of the people who suffer are white. And many of those suffering also support their own suffering. Why and how?